Amber Cross stood at the altar with a phone hidden in her bouquet and a single question burning through her mind. How many seconds after she said, "I do," would it take for someone to die? The text message glowed against white roses. Smile. Say yes. Or your brother dies first. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Today's special shout-out goes to Charbear1868. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. Also, let me tell you something funny. Someone actually bet that I can't reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of this year, and honestly, I want to prove them wrong. So if you're watching this right now and you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button and join the family. Reaching 1,000 subscribers is a very personal goal for me, and your support would mean the world to me. Thank you for believing in me and being part of this journey. And before you go, drop your name and location in the comments. I'd love to give you a special shout-out in my next video. She didn't need to look up to know Tony DeLuca was watching her. She could feel his presence like pressure before a storm, calm, unreadable, already owning her future. His dark suit was tailored to perfection. His hands were steady. His expression gave nothing away. Around them, the cathedral felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage. Armed men lined the walls disguised as guests, their jackets tailored to hide weapons. Politicians sat beside crime families. Reporters hovered near the doors, cameras ready to capture the union that would legitimize the most dangerous man on the eastern seaboard. The bride is a federal financial crimes investigator living under a false identity. The groom is a feared mafia boss with political protection and untraceable wealth. Her family has been abducted by a rival broker who trades in secrets, not drugs. Marriage is the ransom, public, legal, irreversible. The wedding isn't a celebration. It's a sentence. And once she says "I do," there is no way out. The priest's voice droned through traditional vows, but Amber heard nothing except the blood rushing in her ears. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet stem. Beneath the silk ribbon, her thumb hovered over her phone screen, refreshing every few seconds. No new messages. No proof her brother Jeremy was still breathing. No confirmation her mother was still alive. Just the same photograph sent 3 days ago. Both of them bound, blindfolded, alive, for now. Tony's voice cut through her panic, smooth and low. "You look beautiful." She forced her eyes to his face. He wasn't smiling. He never smiled at public events. But there was something in his gaze, assessment, curiosity, maybe even concern. It unnerved her more than hostility would have. "Thank you," she whispered. Lies came easier now. She'd been lying for 2 years. Her real name wasn't Ava Gardner. It was Amber Cross. Special Agent Amber Cross, Financial Crimes Division, Federal Task Force specializing in organized crime and international money laundering. For 26 months, she'd lived undercover as a corporate compliance consultant hired to audit one of Tony DeLuca's legitimate shipping companies. 26 months of watching him move through boardrooms like a predator in a 3-piece suit. 26 months of mapping shell corporations, tracing blood money through real estate trusts, documenting every transaction that disappeared into offshore accounts. 26 months of waiting for the moment she could bring him down. Her task force leader, Edward Hale, had briefed her coldly on day 1. Tony DeLuca is a ghost with teeth. Every investigation collapses. Every witness disappears. Every paper trail burns itself clean. Edward was brilliant, ruthless, and never wrong. He'd spent 15 years dismantling criminal empires. He didn't chase criminals, he erased them. Get close, Edward had told her. Learn his habits. Find his weak spot. So Amber became Ava Gardner. Professional, thorough, unremarkable enough to be trusted, smart enough to be useful. It was supposed to be temporary. It wasn't. Tony noticed her intelligence immediately. The way she asked questions without revealing intent. The way she listened more than she spoke. The way she never flinched when his consigliere, Jeremy Russo, leaned too close or when shipments arrived at odd hours with no paperwork. People lie with their mouths. Tony had told her once during a late-night meeting in his office. Outside, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. Inside, it was just the two of them and a bottle of whiskey he never drank from. But their silence tells the truth. She should have walked away then. She should have requested extraction. Instead, she stayed. Because she was close. So close she could taste it. And then everything shattered. 3 nights ago, Amber returned to her apartment after a 12-hour day cataloging shipping manifests. She was exhausted, her shoulders aching, her mind still running through discrepancies she'd found in container logs. The door was open. Not broken. Not forced. Just open. She froze in the hallway, hand instinctively reaching for the gun she wasn't carrying. Undercover agents didn't carry weapons to dinner meetings. They carried charm and lies. The apartment was silent. No mess. No struggle. Nothing missing. Except her family's photo from the mantel. Her phone rang. Jeremy's voice came through first, panicked, breaking. "Amber, Amber, please," they said. Then her mother, crying so hard the words were unintelligible. Then a stranger's calm, measured tone. Professional. Almost polite. "You're going to marry Tony DeLuca," the man said. "Publicly. Legally. Convincingly." Amber's knees nearly buckled. She gripped the kitchen counter. "Who the hell are you?" "My name is Gardner." The pause. "Not Ava Gardner. Your real name's Alias." Clever, wasn't it? "But I know who you are, Special Agent Cross." Her blood turned to ice. "You're going to walk down that aisle in 72 hours, Gardner continued. "You're going to smile for the cameras. You're going to become Mrs. DeLuca. And you're going to do it all without hesitation, or I will kill your brother first, then your mother, then I'll send you pieces until you understand compliance." "Why?" The word ripped out of her. "Why me? Why this?" "Because Tony DeLuca needs legitimacy. A respectable wife. Political cover. And you," Gardner's voice took on an edge of amusement, "you are perfect. An investigator marrying the man she's been hunting? The irony is delicious. But more importantly, your leverage I can use to destabilize an empire." Photos arrived on her phone seconds later. Jeremy bound to a chair, tape across his mouth, terror in his eyes. Her mother on a concrete floor, bruises on her wrists. Both alive. "For now. You have 48 hours to make the arrangement," Gardner said. "Tony's already received a very compelling reason to marry you. He'll propose tomorrow. You'll say yes. And if you contact your FBI handler, if you even think about extraction, I'll know. And they'll die screaming." The line went dead. Amber stood in her empty apartment, shaking, the photos burning into her retinas. She called Edward anyway. She had no choice. Edward Hale answered on the first ring. His voice was crisp, alert. "Cross. Report." "They have my family." Her voice cracked. "A man named Gardner. He's demanding I marry Tony. He knows who I am. He knows everything." Silence stretched across the line. "Too long." "Edward." "This could be useful," he said finally. His tone was clinical. Detached. "Access you'll never get otherwise." Inside his home. His inner circle. His financial records. Amber's stomach dropped. "Are you serious?" "They'll kill Jeremy. They'll kill my mother. Only if you fail." The pause. "You won't fail, Cross. You're too good. This is the opportunity we've been waiting for." "This isn't an opportunity, it's a death sentence." "Then don't die." Edward's voice hardened. "You'll go through with the wedding. You'll play the role. And you'll finish what we started. That's an order." The line went dead. Amber stared at her phone. Her handler, the man she'd trusted for 2 years, the man who'd promised her backup, extraction, protection, had just sacrificed her like a pawn on a chessboard. She was alone. Completely, terrifyingly alone. Tony proposed the next morning in his office. No speech. No romance. No pretense. He slid a velvet box across his desk. Inside was a ring, platinum, flawless diamond, heavy enough to hurt. "You'll marry me," he said. It wasn't a question. Amber met his eyes. Searched for cruelty, for malice, for the monster she'd been hunting. She found only calculation. Why? She asked. Because someone wants me to. His jaw tightened. And because refusing puts people I care about at risk. He's being blackmailed too, she realized with a jolt. Gardner was playing both sides. When? She whispered. 3 days. She thought of Jeremy's terrified face. Her mother's tears. Gardner's calm threats. Edward's cold dismissal. Yes, she said. Tony's expression didn't change. But something flickered in his eyes. Relief, maybe, or resignation. You don't have to love me, he said quietly, sliding the ring onto her finger. The weight of it felt like shackles. But you do have to stay alive. Now, standing at the altar with that ring burning on her finger and a threat glowing in her bouquet, Amber heard the priest ask the final question. Do you, Ava Gardner, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Every eye in the cathedral fixed on her. Tony's gaze never wavered. Jeremy Russo watched from the front row, sharp-eyed and silent, studying her hands, her breathing, the micro-expressions she couldn't quite control. He knew. Maybe not everything. But enough. One mistake, and he'd expose her. One hesitation, and Gardner would pull the trigger. Amber looked at Tony, this man she'd sworn to destroy, this ghost with teeth, this stranger who was about to become her husband. I do, she said. Her voice didn't shake. The priest smiled. You may kiss the bride. Tony stepped forward. His hand cupped her jaw, tilting her face up. The kiss wasn't tender. It wasn't gentle. It was possession. When he pulled back, his thumb brushed her cheekbone, almost a comfort, almost a warning. Mrs. DeLuca, he murmured, so quietly only she could hear. The cathedral erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Politicians stood. Crime families nodded approval. And Ambercross, Special Agent Ambercross, federal investigator, daughter, sister, prisoner, realized with cold, absolute clarity. She didn't just marry her enemy, she moved into his world, and there was no way out. The DeLuca estate sat on 12 acres of coastal property, surrounded by walls that looked decorative but weren't. Amber counted 4 guard rotations within the first hour, cameras positioned at every angle, motion sensors disguised as landscape lighting. It wasn't a home. It was a fortress pretending to be one. Tony's driver, a silent man named Vincent with scars on his knuckles, carried her single suitcase into the main house. Everything else she owned was still in her apartment. Her real apartment, under her real name, in a building the FBI paid for. That life felt like a dream now. This was the nightmare she couldn't wake from. Your rooms are on the 2nd floor, East Wing, Tony said, leading her through marble hallways lined with art she recognized from Interpol's stolen goods database. You'll have privacy. Anything you need. Except freedom, she said quietly. He stopped walking, turned to face her. You're not a prisoner, Ava. The lie of her cover name felt like glass in her throat. Then I can leave? You can go anywhere on the property. His tone was measured. Careful. The gardens. The library. The pool. But beyond the gates, he paused. Beyond the gates, you become a target. Every enemy I have now watches you. Every rival sees you as leverage. Your visibility didn't decrease with this marriage. It increased. Amber's chest tightened. She'd known this intellectually, but hearing it confirmed felt like a door slamming shut. So I'm safer in the cage, she said. You're safer where I can protect you. From who? Gardner? Your enemies? She met his eyes. Or from you? Something flickered across Tony's face. Hurt, maybe, or resignation. From everyone, he said finally, including yourself. He walked away before she could respond. Amber spent the first 3 days mapping the house. 22 rooms. 6 bathrooms. A wine cellar that doubled as a panic room. Security systems on every window. Guards she recognized from surveillance photos. Men with records, with blood on their hands, with loyalty bought in cash and fear. She waited for violence. For screaming. For the brutality she'd been trained to expect from men like Tony DeLuca. It never came. Instead, she watched him run his empire with surgical precision. Morning meetings in his study with Jeremy Russo and 3 other lieutenants. Phone calls in Italian and Russian. Documents reviewed and signed with meticulous attention to detail. No one raised their voice. No one threatened or postured. When a shipment went missing, Tony didn't rage. He asked questions, listened, then made a single phone call that resolved the situation within an hour. Discipline beats chaos, he told Jeremy during a meeting Amber accidentally overheard. She'd been walking past the study, door slightly ajar. Every time. The Koreans want to renegotiate terms, Jeremy said. They think the wedding makes you weak. Then they're not paying attention. Tony's voice was cold. Weakness is reacting to every insult. Strength is knowing which battles matter. Amber pressed herself against the hallway wall, listening. What about the wife? Jeremy asked. You trust her? Long silence. No, Tony said finally. But I don't trust anyone completely. That's why I'm still alive. She's hiding something. Everyone hides something, Jeremy. The question is whether it's dangerous. Footsteps approached the door. Amber moved quickly, slipping into the library across the hall, heart hammering. That night, she found Tony alone in his study, staring at a photograph on his desk. She couldn't see the image, but she saw his expression, grief, raw and unguarded. He noticed her in the doorway. The grief vanished behind his usual mask. Can't sleep? He asked. Too quiet, she lied. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. She shouldn't. Every instinct screamed to maintain distance, to stay alert, to remember he was the enemy. But she sat. Tony poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Slid one toward her. My father built this empire, he said, still looking at the photograph. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. He taught me that power without control is just noise. And noise gets you killed. Amber studied him. This wasn't the monster Edward had described. This was someone else entirely. Is that him? She nodded toward the photograph. Tony turned it so she could see. An older man with Tony's eyes, standing beside a younger Tony, both smiling. Taken 3 months before he died. Tony's jaw tightened. Someone close to him gave up his location. He walked into an ambush thinking he was meeting an ally. I'm sorry, Amber said. She meant it. And that terrified her. Jeremy Russo cornered her in the garden 4 days after the wedding. She'd been walking the property perimeter, counting guards, noting shift changes, old habits from her training that she couldn't shake. Beautiful morning, Jeremy said, appearing beside her like a ghost. Amber controlled her flinch. Barely. Yes, she managed. You walk the perimeter every day. Same time. Same route. He plucked a leaf from a hedge, examining it. Creature of habit? I like routine. Funny thing about routines. Jeremy's smile didn't reach his eyes. They reveal patterns. And patterns reveal intent. Amber's pulse spiked. I don't know what you mean. Where did you work before Tony hired you? Before the compliance consulting. The question came too fast. Too sharp. Corporate audit firms, she said smoothly. The lie was practiced, documented, airtight. Boston, mostly. Some work in New York. Jeremy watched her hands. You don't wear your wedding ring when you walk. She'd taken it off that morning. The weight bothered her, threw off her balance when she moved. Stupid. Careless. It's heavy, she said. I didn't want to damage it. Or you don't want to wear it. Their eyes locked. I wear it when it matters, Amber said carefully. Everything matters now, Mrs. DeLuca. Jeremy stepped closer. Every choice. Every word. Every lie. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing in the garden with ice in her veins. He knew. Maybe not everything. But enough to be dangerous. One mistake. That's all it would take. That afternoon, Tony gave her limited access to his financial systems. You're a compliance consultant, he said, pulling up files on his computer. Consult. Find the vulnerabilities before someone else does. It was a test. She knew that. But it was also an opportunity. Amber spent 6 hours combing through transaction records, shell company formations, shipping manifests. The access was restricted. She could see current operations but not historical data, legitimate businesses but not the underlying criminal infrastructure. Still, it was more than she'd ever had before. And it was wrong. Transactions that appeared in Tony's files didn't match the federal reports Edward had shown her. Entire operations were missing from the FBI's database. Shipments attributed to Tony during months he'd been photographed overseas, attending public events with unbreakable alibis. Someone had been feeding the FBI false intelligence. Or someone had been feeding Tony false records. Amber photographed everything with the camera Edward had hidden in her watch. Then she called him using the encrypted phone he'd provided, her hands shaking. Cross. Report. The files don't match, she said quickly, quietly, standing in the bathroom with the shower running to mask her voice. Crimes attributed to Tony while he was out of the country. Transactions that don't exist in his actual system. Someone's been planting evidence. Silence. Edward. You're inside his system for less than a day and you're already defending him? His voice was cold. That's called Stockholm Syndrome, Cross. This isn't, I'm not, she struggled for words. I'm telling you the evidence is compromised. If we build a case on bad intel, the case is solid. You're the one who's compromised. Edward's tone hardened. Stay focused on the mission. Document everything. And stop questioning intel that's been verified through multiple sources. But that's an order. The line went dead. Amber stared at her phone, nausea rolling through her. Edward wasn't listening. He didn't want to listen. But the burner phone Gardner had forced her to keep buzzed at 2 a.m. Amber jolted awake in the massive bed, alone in rooms that still felt foreign. She grabbed the phone from beneath her pillow. New photos. Jeremy, thinner now, bruises darker. Her mother, hollow-eyed. Both still alive. Barely. The text followed seconds later. You're settling in nicely. How domestic. But don't get comfortable. I need you to do something for me. Amber typed back with shaking hands. What? Tony's meeting the Koreans next week. Make sure it goes badly. Plant doubt. Cause friction. I need them at each other's throats. Why? Because chaos is profitable. And because I said so. Your family's continued breathing depends on your cooperation. Another photo loaded. A newspaper. Today's date. Jeremy holding it, proof of life. You have 4 days, Gardner sent. Don't disappoint me. The phone went dead. Amber sat in the darkness, her mind racing. Gardner wasn't just blackmailing her into marriage. He was using her to destabilize Tony's entire operation. Every alliance. Every partnership. He was forcing her to destroy the man she'd married from the inside. And Edward wasn't helping. He was encouraging it. Who was she really working for? The next morning, Amber found Tony in the garden where Jeremy had confronted her. He was alone, rare for him, staring out at the ocean visible beyond the walls. She should walk away. She should maintain her cover. But the question escaped before she could stop it. Did you ever order someone killed who didn't deserve it? Tony turned slowly, studied her face. Yes, he said finally. Once. I was young. Listened to bad intelligence. Trusted the wrong person's word. His voice was quiet, heavy. I've spent 15 years making sure it never happens again. How do you know who to trust? You don't. He moved closer. You watch. You listen. You wait for them to reveal themselves. The pause. Why are you asking? Because she was hunting the wrong man. Because Edward was lying. Because Gardner was playing both sides. Because nothing made sense anymore. Because I don't know who the villain is, she said honestly. Tony's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe understanding. Neither do I, he admitted. But I'm starting to suspect it's not who we think. Their eyes held. In that moment, Amber realized with cold, absolute clarity. Tony DeLuca wasn't her enemy. He was her only ally in a game she didn't understand. And if she didn't figure out the rules soon, they'd both end up dead. Amber found it by accident. She'd been searching Tony's security archives for footage of the perimeter, trying to map blind spots, identify escape routes, anything that might help if Gardner escalated. The system was vast, redundant, paranoid. Cameras covered every angle of the estate, storing months of footage in encrypted files. But one folder was labeled differently, external. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. This wasn't perimeter footage. This was surveillance outside the property. People Tony was watching. She shouldn't look. But she clicked anyway. The files were organized by location and date. Her eyes caught on a familiar address, the federal building in downtown Manhattan, where Edward's office was located. She opened the file, and her world fractured. The timestamp read 6 months ago, long before her family was taken, before the forced marriage, before everything fell apart. The footage showed Edward Hale exiting the building through a side entrance. Alone. Looking over his shoulder. Meeting someone in a parked sedan. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but when the man stepped out of the car, Amber's blood turned to ice. Gardner. She watched them talk for 11 minutes. Watched Edward hand over a manila envelope. Watched Gardner pass him something in return, too small to identify, but the exchange was clear. She scrolled through more files. For months ago, another meeting. Different location. Same 2 men. 3 months ago, Edward and Gardner in a parking garage, their body language familiar, comfortable. 2 weeks before her family was taken, Edward passing Gardner a phone. The timeline assembled itself in her mind like pieces of shattered glass coming together to form a blade. Edward hadn't been investigating Tony. He'd been framing him. Every false report. Every planted transaction. Every piece of evidence that didn't match reality. All of it orchestrated by her handler. The man she trusted for 2 years had been working with Gardner from the beginning. Amber's hands shook so violently she had to grip the desk to steady herself. She called Edward from a burner phone she'd stolen from Tony's study, standing in the empty garage where Vincent parked the cars. "We need to meet," she said when he answered. "Now." "Cross, you're compromised." "I told you." "I know about Gardner." Silence. Long and damning. "Where?" Edward asked finally. "The pier. South End. 1 hour. Come alone." She hung up before he could argue. The pier was abandoned, industrial, the kind of place where screams disappeared into fog and water. Amber arrived early, positioned herself where she could see Edward approach. He came alone, as instructed. But his hand stayed near his jacket, near his weapon. "You're making a mistake," he called out. "Am I?" Amber stepped into the light. "I saw the footage, Edward. You and Gardner. Multiple meetings. Months before my family was taken." Edward's expression didn't change. That was the worst part. No surprise. No denial. Just cold calculation. "So you've been digging through DeLuca's files," he said. "Getting comfortable in your new home? You set me up." Her voice cracked. "You've been working with Gardner all along. You wanted me inside Tony's house. You wanted me trapped." "Yes." The admission came easily. "I did." The confirmation shouldn't have hurt. She'd already known, but it did. Why? Because DeLuca needed to be destabilized from the inside. Because Gardner provided an opportunity we couldn't create ourselves. Because sometimes the ends justify the means. Edward moved closer. "You were always the perfect tool, Cross. Smart enough to get close. Idealistic enough to commit. Expendable enough to sacrifice." Expendable. The word tasted like poison. Your family was leverage we couldn't pass up. Gardner offered them. I accepted. Simple transaction. Amber's vision blurred with rage. "You let them take my mother. My brother. I let them create the conditions for your greatest success." His tone was almost gentle. Almost. "You're inside DeLuca's inner circle now. You have access to everything. All you have to do is finish what we started." "And if I refuse?" "Then Gardner kills your family, DeLuca kills you when he figures out who you really are, and I find another agent to finish the job." Edward shrugged. "Your choice. Why frame Tony? Why not just arrest him legitimately?" "Because legitimate arrests require legitimate evidence. And DeLuca's too careful for that. But frame him convincingly enough, put enough pressure on his organization, and he'll make mistakes. Desperate men always do." "What about his father?" The question came out sharp. Was that you too? Edward's smile was cold. Gardner handled that personally. Useful, having a broker who specializes in destabilization. He removed the old DeLuca, I ensured the investigation went nowhere, and Tony inherited an empire we could manipulate. Amber stared at the man she trusted, the man who'd trained her, who'd promised to protect her. She'd been hunting monsters. She'd been working for one. You're done, Edward. No, Cross. You're done. The moment you walked down that aisle, you became exactly what I needed you to be, a weapon I could aim at DeLuca's heart. He turned to leave. Finish the mission. Or watch everyone you love die knowing you failed them. He disappeared into the fog. Amber stood alone on the pier, shaking with fury and grief and terrible, absolute clarity. She'd been played from the beginning. They all had been. She found Tony in his study, alone, reviewing documents by lamplight. It was past midnight. The house was silent. He looked up when she entered. Saw her face. What happened? Amber closed the door behind her. Locked it. I need to tell you the truth, she said. Ava. My name isn't Ava Gardner. It's Amber Cross. The words came out steady despite her shaking hands. I'm a federal agent. Financial Crimes Division. I've been undercover for 2 years investigating you. Tony went very still. I was sent to destroy you, she continued. To get close, gather evidence, bring down your empire. My handler's name is Edward Hale. He's been feeding false intelligence to the FBI, framing you for crimes you didn't commit, planting evidence to make you look guilty. Why are you telling me this? Because Gardner didn't just take my family. He's working with Edward. They orchestrated everything, the blackmail, the marriage, your father's death. They've been manipulating both of us from the beginning. Tony stood slowly. She expected rage, violence, the monster she'd been trained to fear. Instead, his face went pale. Edward Hale, he repeated quietly. My father trusted him. They had an arrangement, federal protection in exchange for information on rival families. My father thought Edward was his ally. The pieces clicked into place. Edward set up the ambush, Amber whispered, and Gardner pulled the trigger. Tony's hands curled into fists. I've been hunting the wrong people for 15 years. They stared at each other across the desk, 2 pawns in a game they'd never understood, manipulated by the same masters. Why tell me now? Tony asked. Because I'm done being used. Because my family is still hostage. Because, her voice broke. Because you're not my enemy. You never were. And you're not mine. The silence stretched between them, heavy with revelation and tentative understanding. They'll kill us both if they figure out we know, Tony said finally. Probably. Your family dies if we fail. I know. And even if we succeed, you're still a federal agent who married a crime boss. I'm still the man you were sent to destroy. I know that too. Tony moved around the desk. Stopped close enough that she could see the calculation in his eyes. The same assessment he'd given her at the altar, but different now. Searching for truth instead of deception. Can I trust you? He asked. Can I trust you? No, he admitted. Not completely. Not yet. Then we're even. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. We need a plan. We set a trap, Amber said. For Edward and Gardner both. Use their own manipulation against them. Risky. Everything is risky now. Tony extended his hand. Not a romantic gesture. A business arrangement between temporary allies. Partners, he said. Amber took his hand. His grip was firm, steady. Partners, she agreed. They worked through the night, mapping connections, building strategy, identifying vulnerabilities. Somewhere around 3 a.m., Tony poured them both coffee. Their fingers brushed when he handed her the cup. Neither of them pulled away. I married you thinking you were the enemy, he said quietly. I married you planning your destruction. And now? Amber looked at him, this man she'd hunted, feared, misunderstood. Now I choose the truth, she said. Whatever that costs. Even if the truth is complicated? Especially then. Tony's expression softened. Just slightly. Just enough. Then we do this right, he said. We save your family. We expose Edward. We end Gardner. And after, he paused. After, we figure out what we actually are to each other. Without the lies. The marriage wasn't a cage anymore. It was a battlefield. And they were finally fighting on the same side. He doesn't get the chance, Tony replied. He stood by the window, tension radiating from every line of his body. Vincent and Marco will be positioned on the rooftops. You'll be in the van monitoring audio. I'll be 2 blocks away. You should be closer, Jeremy argued. If Edward sees me, this whole thing falls apart. Amber caught Tony's reflection in the mirror. They'd spent 3 days planning this, every angle, every contingency, every possible way it could go wrong. The list was long and terrifying. He'll want to meet somewhere public, she said, adjusting her collar to hide the microphone. Somewhere he feels in control. Then will be somewhere he doesn't see. Tony turned from the window, his gaze locking with hers. At the first sign of trouble, you abort. Understood? I need him to confess on tape. I need you alive. The words came out harder than he probably intended. He softened his tone. Your family needs you alive. We abort if it goes sideways. Amber nodded, though they both knew she wouldn't run. Not until she had what she needed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Edward, Riverside Park. East entrance. 20 minutes. He's moving fast, Jeremy observed. Doesn't want you to prepare. Too late for that. Amber stood, checking her reflection one final time. She looked like Ava Gardner, polished, professional, perfectly composed. But she was Amber Cross. And she was done playing victim. Edward waited on a bench overlooking the river, briefcase beside him, looking like any other federal agent on a lunch break. Amber approached slowly, hands visible, letting him see she was alone. Cross. He didn't stand. Decided to be reasonable after all? I need guarantees, she said, sitting beside him but keeping distance. My family released. Alive. Today. After you deliver what I need. Which is? DeLuca's financial records. The real ones. Everything he's hiding. Edward's eyes were cold, assessing. You have access now. Get them. And if I can't? Then Gardner keeps your family a little longer. Might lose a finger or two to encourage your cooperation. Amber's jaw tightened. The wire beneath her blouse felt like it was burning her skin. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why frame Tony? Why kill his father? Because men like DeLuca think they're untouchable. Someone needs to prove otherwise. Edward leaned back, casual. Besides, the old man's death opened opportunities. New power structures. New alliances. Gardner and I positioned ourselves perfectly. You murdered him for profit. I neutralized a threat for strategic gain. There's a difference. And me? Was I ever anything but a pawn? Edward actually smiled. You were useful. Are still useful. Stop pretending you have choices here, Cross. You belong to me. You always have. Amber's hand moved toward her phone, the signal to abort. Then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. Not from Edward. From behind them. Touching reunion, Gardner's voice came from the shadows of the trees. But I'm afraid we need to accelerate the timeline. Amber spun to see him emerge, weapon trained on Edward, 2 armed men flanking him. Edward's hand went for his gun, but Gardner's men were faster. Gardner warned. Hands visible, Agent Hale. Or I drop you where you sit. What the hell is this? Edward demanded. This is me cutting out the middleman. Gardner's attention shifted to Amber. You've been digging into surveillance footage, Mrs. DeLuca. Found some interesting material, I'm told. Which means you know too much. And dear Edward here has outlived his usefulness. Amber's pulse hammered. This wasn't the plan. Gardner wasn't supposed to be here. I have men positioned, Edward started. You had men positioned. They're currently indisposed. Gardner smiled. I've been planning this longer than you have. Gunfire erupted. Not from Gardner, from the rooftops. Vincent and Marco, opening fire on Gardner's men. Chaos exploded. Amber threw herself behind the bench as bullets tore through wood and stone. Edward scrambled for cover, weapon drawn, returning fire. Gardner's men scattered, one dropping immediately, the other diving behind a stone pillar. "Amber!" Jeremy's voice crackled through her earpiece. "North exit now." She ran, keeping low, adrenaline drowning out everything except survival. Gardner caught her halfway across the park. His hand locked around her arm, spinning her back. She saw the gun, saw his finger on the trigger, saw the wire peeking out from beneath her torn collar. "Clever girl," he said, then fired. The impact punched through her shoulder, white-hot agony that drove her to her knees. The recorder fell from her pocket, skittering across concrete, still running, still capturing everything. Gardner aimed for her head. Another shot rang out, from behind him. "Tony!" Gardner's weapon flew from his hand as Tony's bullet tore through his wrist. Then Tony was there, moving with lethal precision, his men flooding the park from every direction. "Get her out!" Tony roared at Jeremy. But Amber's vision was already darkening, blood soaking through her blouse, Edward's recorded confessions still playing from the device on the ground. Neutralized a threat for strategic gain. Gardner and I positioned ourselves perfectly. Everything went black. Amber woke in a private hospital room, sunlight streaming through windows, her shoulder bandaged and throbbing. Tony sat beside her bed, exhausted, blood still on his shirt collar. "Your family's safe," he said before she could ask. Jeremy found them in a warehouse in Queens. Dehydrated, traumatized, but alive. They're being treated 2 floors down. Relief crashed through her so intensely she couldn't speak. "Edward's in federal custody," Tony continued. "The wire caught everything. His own agency arrested him. He's facing conspiracy, murder, corruption charges. He'll never see daylight again." "Gardner?" Tony's expression darkened. "Disappeared. We're still looking." Amber closed her eyes. One threat neutralized. One still out there. "The media has the recordings," Tony said quietly. "Edward's confession. The surveillance footage of his meetings with Gardner. It's everywhere. The FBI's entire investigation into me has been suspended pending internal review." "So you're free?" "Not quite. But closer than I've been in years." He stood, moved to the window. "I'm dismantling the criminal operations. Not overnight, it'll take time, careful planning. But I'm done living in my father's shadow. Done letting men like Edward define who I am." "What will you do?" "Build something different. Something legitimate." He turned back to her. "If that's even possible now." "It is," Amber said. "If you mean it." "I do." 6 weeks later, Amber submitted her resignation to the FBI. She'd testified against Edward, provided evidence, helped expose a corruption network that reached higher than anyone suspected. But she couldn't stay. Not after everything. Not after learning how easily institutions betrayed the people who served them. Her mother and Jeremy, her brother, not Tony's consigliere, moved to a secure location upstate. Tony paid for their protection, their therapy, their new beginning. They didn't forgive Amber immediately. How could they? She'd put them in danger, even if unknowingly. But they were alive. That was enough for now. The fortress became quieter. Guards rotated out, replaced by legitimate security. Meetings grew less frequent. The art returned to its rightful owners through anonymous donations. Tony moved through the house differently, lighter, somehow, despite the empire he was systematically deconstructing. Amber found him one evening on the terrace overlooking the ocean. "Still here," he observed. "Still here," she confirmed. The marriage had been forced, built on lies and blackmail and mutual desperation. But staying? That was a choice. "I don't know what we are," Amber admitted. "We're not enemies. Not exactly friends. Definitely not a normal married couple." "No," Tony agreed. "But maybe we can figure it out. Without the lies this time." She took his hand. No gun hidden in her palm. No wire recording their conversation. Just skin against skin, warm and real. "Without the lies," she echoed. The fortress walls still stood. But inside them, something new was growing. Fragile, complicated, and entirely theirs. Amber Cross had married the man she swore to destroy. She'd discovered the real enemy was the system that sent her. And she'd chosen truth over vengeance, clarity over revenge. The trap hadn't been Tony's world. It had been the lie she'd been living. Now, finally she was free. The end. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazy and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.